Hi, this is Sartor Resartus by Thomas Carlyle, and I'm on the 11th chapter. It's called Perspective. The philosophy of clothes is now, to all readers, as we predicted it would do, unfolding itself into new boundless expansions of a cloud-capped, almost chimerical aspect, yet not without azure lumens in the far distance and streaks of an Elysian brightness, the highly questionable purport and promise of which it is becoming more and more important for us to ascertain. Is that a real Elysian brightness, cries many a timid wayfarer, or the reflex of pandemonium lava? Is it of a truth leading us into beatific asphodel meadows, or the yellow burning marl of hell on earth? Our professor, like other mystics, whether delirious or inspired, gives an editor enough to do. Ever higher and dizzier are the heights he leads us to. More piercing, all-comprehending, all-confounding are his views and glances. For example, this of nature being not an aggregate, but a whole. Well, sang the Hebrew psalmist, if I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the universe, God is there. Thou thyself, O cultivated reader, which too probably art no psalmist, but a prosaist, knowing God only by tradition, knowest thou any corner of the world where at least force is not? The drop which thou shakest from thy wet hand rests not where it falls, but tomorrow thou findest it swept away. Already on the wings of the north wind, it is nearing the Tropic of Cancer. How it came to evaporate and not lie motionless? Thinkest thou there is aught motionless, without forest, and utterly dead? As I rode through the Schwarzwald, I said to myself, that little fire which glows star-like across the dark-growing Nachtend moor, where the sooty smith bends over his anvil, and thou hopest to replace thy lost horseshoe, is it a detached, separated speck cut off from the whole universe, or indissolubly joined to the whole? Thou fool, that smithy fire was primarily kindled at the sun, is fed by air that circulates from before Noah's deluge, from beyond Dogstar, therein with iron force and coal force, and the far stranger force of man, are cunning affinities and battles and victories of force brought about it. It is a little ganglion or nervous center in the great vital system of immensity. Call it, if thou wilt, an unconscious altar, kindled on the bosom of the All, whose iron sacrifice, whose iron smoke and influence reach quite through the All, whose dingy priest, not by word, yet by brain and sinew, preaches forth the mystery of force, nay, preaches forth exoterically enough one little textlet from the gospel of freedom, the gospel of man's force, commanding, and one day to be all-commanding. Detached, separated, I say there is no such separation. Nothing hitherto was ever stranded, cast aside, but all, were it withered leaf, works together with all, is borne forward on the bottomless, shoreless flood of action, and lives through perpetual metamorphosis. The withered leaf is not dead and lost. There are forces in it and around it, though working in an inverse order, else how could it rot? Despise not the rag from which man makes paper, or the litter from which the earth makes corn. Rightly viewed, no meanest object insignificant. All objects are as windows, through which the philosophic eye looks into infinitude itself. Again, leaving that wondrous Schwarzwald smithy altar, what vacant high-sailing airships are these, and whither will they sail with us? All visible things are emblems. What thou seest is not there on its own account, strictly taken, is not there at all. Matter exists only spiritually, and to represent some idea and body it forth. Hence clothes, as despicable as we think them, are so unspeakably significant. Clothes, from the king's mantle downwards, are emblematic, not of want only, but of manifold cunning victory over want. On the other hand, all emblematic things are properly clothes, thought-woven or hand-woven. Must not the imagination weave garments, visible bodies, wherein the else invisible creatures and inspirations of our reason are, like the spirits revealed, and first become all-powerful? The rather if, as we often see, the hand to aid her, and by will close or otherwise reveal such even to the outward eye. Men are properly said to be clothed with authority, clothed with beauty, with curses, and the like. Nay, if you consider it, what man himself and his whole terrestrial life but an emblem, a clothing or visible garment for the divine me of his, cast hither like a light particle down from heaven, thus is he said to be clothed with a body. Language is called the garment of thought. However, it should rather be, language is the flesh garment, the body of thought. I said that the imagination wove this flesh garment, and does not she? Metaphors are her stuff. Examine language. What if you accept some few primitive elements of natural sound? What is it all but metaphors, recognized as such, or no longer recognized, still fluid or florid, or now solid, grown, and colorless? If those same primitive elements are the osseous fixtures in the flesh garment, language, then are metaphors its muscles and tissues and living integuments, and unmetaphorical style you shall in vain seek for. Is not your very attention and stretching too? The difference lies here. Some styles are lean, a just wiry, the muscle itself seems osseous. Some are even quite pallid, hunger-bitten, and dead-looking, while others again glow in the flush of health and vigorous self-growth. Sometimes, as in my own case, not without apoplectic tendency. Moreover, there are sham metaphors, which overchanging the same thought's body, best naked, and deceptively bedizening or bolstering it out, may call its false stuffings superfluous show cloaks, put's mantle, and tawdry woolen rags, whereof he that runs and reads may gather whole hampers and burn them. Then which paragraph on metaphors did the reader ever chance to see more surprisingly metaphorical? However, that is not our chief grievance. The professor continues, why multiply instances? It is written, the heavens and the earth shall fade away like a vesture, which indeed they are, the time vesture of the eternal. Whatsoever sensibly exists, whatsoever represents spirit to spirit, is properly a clothing, a suit of raiment, put on for season and to be laid off. Thus, in the one pregnant subject of clothes, rightly understood, is included that all men have thought, dreamed, done, and been. The whole external universe and what it holds is but clothing, and the essence of all science lies in the philosophy of clothes. Towards these dim, infinite, expanded regions, close bordering on the impalpable inane, it is not without apprehension and perpetual difficulties that the editor sees himself journeying and struggling. Till lately a cheerful day-star of hope hung before him, and the expected aid of Hofrath Hoistreck, which day-star, however, melts now, not into the red of morning, but into a vague gray half-light, uncertain whether dawn or day, or dusk, or of utter darkness. For the last week, these so-called biographical documents are in his hand. By the kindness of Scottish Hamburg merchant, whose name known to the whole mercantile world he must not mention, but whose honorable courtesy and now and often before spontaneously manifested to him, a mere literary stranger, he cannot soon forget. The bulky Weisnichttu packet, with all its custom house seals, foreign hieroglyphs, and miscellaneous tokens of travel, arrived here in perfect safety and free of cost. The reader shall now fancy with what hot haste it was broken up, with what breathless expectation glanced over, and alas, with what unquiet disappointment it has, since then, been thrown down and taken up. Hofrath Hoistreck, in 2 long-winded letter full of compliments, Weisnichttu politics, dinners, dining repartees, and other ephemeral trivialities, proceeds to remind us of what we already knew, that however it may be with metaphysics and other abstract science originating in the head, Verstand, alone, no life philosophy, Lebensphilosophie, such as this of clothes pretends to be, which originates equally in the character Gemeth and equally speaks thereto, can attain its significance till the character itself is known and seen, till the author's view of the world, Weltansicht, and how actively and passively came by such a view, are clear. In short, till a biography of him has been philosophico-poetically written, and even philosophico-poetically read, nay, adds he, where the speculative scientific truth, speculative truth even known, you still in this inquiring age ask yourself, whence came it, and why, and how? And rest not till, if no better may be, fancy have shaped out an answer, and either in the authentic lineaments of fact, or the forged ones of fiction, a complete picture and genetical history of man in the spiritual endeavor lies before you. But why, says the Hofrath, and indeed say we, do I dilate on the uses of Teufelsdrock's biography? The great Herr Minister von Goethe has penetratingly remarked that man is properly the only object that interests man. Thus I, too, have noted that in Weisnick, too, our whole conversation is little or nothing else but biography or autobiography, ever humano-anecdotal, menschlich anekdotisch. Biography is by nature the most universally profitable, universally pleasant of all things, especially biography of distinguished individuals. By this time, mein Versterter, my most esteemed, continues he with eloquence, which, unless the words be purloined from Teufelsdrock or some trick of his, as we suspect, is well nigh unaccountable. By this time you are fairly plunged, vertieft, in the mighty forest of close philosophy, and looking round, as all readers do, with astonishment enough. Such portions and passages as you have already mastered and brought to paper could not but awaken a strange curiosity touching the mind they issued from. The perhaps unparalleled psychical mechanism which manufactured in such matter and emitted to the light of day. Had Teufelsdrock also a father and mother? Did he at one time wear drivel bibs and live on spoon meat? Did he ever in rapture and tears clasp a friend's bosom to his, looks as though wistfully into the long burial isle of the past, where only winds and their low, harsh moan give inarticulate answer? Has he fought duels? Good heaven! How did he comport himself when in love? By what singular stair-steps, in short, and subterranean passages and sloughs of despair and steep Pisgah hills, has he reached this wonderful prophetic Hebron, a true old-clothes Jewry, wherein he now dwells? To all these natural questions the voice of public history is as yet silent, certain only that he has been and is a pilgrim and a traveler from a far country, more or less footsore and travel-soiled, has parted with road companions, fallen among thieves, or been poisoned by bad cookery, blistered with bug bites, nevertheless at every stage, for they have let him pass, has had the bill to discharge. But the whole particulars of his route, his weather observations, the picturesque sketches he took, though all regularly jotted down in an indelible sympathetic ink by an invisible interior penman, and are these nowhere forthcoming? Perhaps quite lost. One other leaf of that mighty volume of human memory left to fly abroad, unprinted, unpublished, unbound up as waste paper, and to rot, the sport of rainy winds. No, Herr Hergesgeber is no wise. I hear, by the unexampled favor you stand in with our sage, said not a biography only, but an autobiography, at least the materials for such, wherefrom, if I misreckon not, your perspicacity will draw fullest insight, and so the whole philosophy and philosopher of clothes will stand clear to the wondering eyes of England, nay thence through America, through Hindostan and the antipodal New Holland, finally conquer, einen men, great part of this terrestrial planet. And now let sympathizing reader judge our feelings, when in place of this same autobiography with fullest insight we find 6 considerable paper bags, carefully sealed and marked successfully in gilt china ink, with the symbols of 6 southern zodiacal signs, beginning in Libra, in the inside of which sealed bags lie miscellaneous masses of sheets, and oftener shredders and snips, written in Professor Teufelsdrock's scarce legible cursive script, and treating of all imaginable things under the zodiac and above it, but of his own personal history only at rare intervals and in the most enigmatic manner. Whole fascicles there are, wherein Professor, or as he here, speaking in the third person, calls himself the Wanderer, is not once named. Then again, amidst what seems to be a metaphysico-theological disquisition, detached thoughts on the steam engine, or the continued possibility of prophecy, we shall meet some quite private, not unimportant biographical fact. On certain sheets stand dreams, authentic or not, while the circumjacent waking actions are omitted. Anecdotes, oftenest without date or place or time, fly loosely on separate slips, like Sibylline leaves. Interspersed are purely autobiographical delineations, yet without connection, without recognizable coherence, so unimport, so superfluously minute, they almost remind us of P.P. Clerk of the parish. Thus does famine of all intelligence alternate with waste. Selection, order appears to be unknown to the professor. In all bags, the same imbroglio. Only perhaps in the bag Capricorn and those near it, the confusion a little worse confounded. Close by a rather eloquent oration, on receiving the doctor's hat, lie the wash bills marked basalt settled. His travelers are indicated by the street advertisements of the various cities he has visited, of which street advertisements, in the most living tongues, here is perhaps the completest collection extant. So that if the closed volume itself was too like chaos, we have now, instead of solar luminary, that should still in the airy limbo by which intermixture will farther volatilize and discompose it. As we shall perhaps see, our duty ultimately to deposit the 6 paper bags in the British Museum. Farther description and all vituperation of them may be spared. Biography or autobiography of Teufelsdrock there is, clearly enough, none to be gleaned here. At most, some sketchy, shadowy, fugitive likeness of him may, by unheard of efforts, partly of intellect, partly of imagination, on the one side of editor and of reader, rise up between them. Only as gaseous, chaotic appendix to this aqueous, chaotic volume can the contents of the 6 bags hover round us, and portions thereof be incorporated with our delineation of it. Daily and nightly does the editor sit with green spectacles, deciphering these unimaginable documents from their perplexed cursive script, collating them with almost equally unimaginable volume, which stands in legible print, over such a universal medley of high and low, of hot, cold, moist, and dry, as here the struggle by union of like with like, which is method, to build a firm bridge for British travelers. Never perhaps since our first bridge builders, sin and death, built the stupendous ark from Hellgate to earth, did any pontifex or pontiff undertake such a task, present to the editor. For in this ark too, leading, as we humbly presume, far outwards that grand primeval one, the materials are to be fished up from the weltering deep, and down from the simmering air, here one mass, there another, and cunningly cemented, while the elements boil beneath, nor is there any supernatural force to do it with, but simply the diligence and feeble thinking faculty of an English editor, endeavoring to evolve printed creation out of a German printed and written chaos, wherein he shoots to and fro in it, gathering, clutching, and piecing the wide to the far distant, wherefore his whole faculty and self are like to be swallowed up. Patiently, under these incessant toils and agitations, does the editor, dismissing all anger, seem otherwise robust health declining, some fraction of his allotted natural sleep nightly, leaving him and little but an inflamed nervous system to be looked for. What the use of health or of life if not to do some work therewith? And what work nobler than transplanting foreign thought into the barren domestic soil, except indeed planting thought of your own, which the fewest are privileged to do? Wild as it looks, the philosophy of clothes, can we ever reach it for its real meaning? Promises to reveal new coming eras, the first dim rudiments and already budding germs of a nobler era in the universal history. Is not such a prize worth some striving? Forward with us, courageous reader, be it towards failure or towards success. The latter thou sharest with us, the former also is not all our own.